Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to our second speaker before the break. And our speaker coming up next is Tyrone D'Lisle. Tyrone is a co-founder of WePlanet Australia, getting us started at the start of last year. And he is also the digital communications lead for WePlanet internationally. Now, I described him in his bio for this event as a member of the Global Secretariat, which sounds a bit sinister, but that's just the organisation that implements the work of WePlanet globally. So I'll now hand over to Tyrone to give us updates on WePlanet International's work.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. That was a great presentation. I hope everyone found that insightful. I am just going to share my screen now. I hope that everyone can see this.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Andrea asked me to give an update on the what's been happening in the broader global movement, but I felt like that needed some bigger context about the story of our movement. So I'm just going to quickly move through that, and we'll provide some updates as well. So welcome everyone. We are WePlanet. We're the pro-science environmental movement. So the scientific innovations that we need for a thriving humanity on a thriving planet are being blocked and attacked, from big industries defending their market dominance against emerging sustainable industries to populist politicians spreading misinformation, or even well-funded traditional environmental organizations stuck in an appeal to nature fallacy. So why WePlanet? We're the movement that's campaigning to defend those important innovations. And there's some of us there at the recent WePlanet International conference. And here's some photos from a action that we had in Uganda. So a little bit about our backstory. In middle of 2021, an unusual group of activists from across Europe gathered in a basement in a cheap hotel in Antwerp with a common mission to transform the environmental movement and make it pro-nuclear, pro-science, pro-innovation. Here's some of their workshopping that they did on a board. There's Mark Linus, a key environmental activist over many years, helped bring the movement together. So after successfully securing some funding from philanthropic foundations, we were able to officially launch our movement in February 2022. Initially, it was called WePlanet. But something that we didn't foresee when we launched at the movement was just how quickly the movement would grow to become a truly global movement. One challenge that came with this was securing our branding. After running into some trademark issues with WePlanet, we decided to rebrand to WePlanet. We feel this better reflects our who we are and emphasizes the humanism of our movement. So we are now a truly global organization with 19 with chapters in 19 countries, including here in Australia, across 5 continents, including Africa and Asia. Here's some more of who we are. We're science-backed, we're citizens and scientists working for those science-backed scalable solutions to the ecological crisis so that we can have that thriving humanity on a thriving planet. So be it cultivated meat, carbon-free nuclear power, or climate-resilient gene editing crops, we at WePlanet fight the forces of misinformation, whether that comes from the left or whether that comes from the right. And that can make us unpopular sometimes, but we don't mind because we're fighting for what's important and what matters. So what have we done so far? Well, almost as soon as we launched our movement, Russia decided to invade Ukraine. So we immediately jumped into action, producing a report which showed the clear links between fossil fuels and how that funds Putin's war machine and autocratic regimes around the world. The report included a realistic plan for how the EU could immediately end Russian fossil fuel imports and help stop funding Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The report included things like reducing speed limits, switching to active and public transport, and insulation, and obviously keeping Germany's nuclear power plants online. Later that year, we launched, alongside well-known environmentalist George Monbiot, an ambitious plan to reboot food and secure a truly sustainable global food system. And thank you, Andrea, for talking about those elements here in Australia. At that year's UN climate conference in Egypt, we presented this plan to the world's media and called out how the global climate conference that didn't have the global food system on the agenda, despite the impact that that has on our climate. Last year, we launched our most successful campaign. Dear Greenpeace is a rallying cry from young people demanding an honest, science-based approach to the climate crisis. Together, we successfully became an intervening party on the side of the European Commission, defending nuclear energy against Greenpeace, who were suing over the inclusion of clean nuclear energy in the EU sustainable finance laws. Our national organisations in Africa launched the Switch on Africa campaign, calling for 10 times increase in electricity generation across the continent to allow Africa to industrialise and not just lift people out of poverty, but lift people into prosperity. Here's the director of WePlanet Africa, Patricia Nanteza, introducing this campaign last year. We've had 3 really big wins so far, primarily in the EU because our original organisations were in the EU, so they've had a longer opportunity to influence policy. So our first major win was just a few months after we got started, which was securing nuclear in the EU green taxonomy, as I just discussed. This was not a sure thing. We mobilised a large number of people on the streets, and we also had direct engagement with politicians leading up to the vote. And we successfully secured a positive vote in the European Parliament for that, which was fantastic. The second one is we secured $55 million in an EU funding package for those alternative proteins that Andrea was mentioning. And our most recent major victory was in February this year, where we successfully got the European Parliament to vote in favour of new genomic techniques and a relaxing of regulations to bring them in line with the science, so that these technologies could be better used to provide sustainable agriculture across the European Union and more broadly. So here's the first win, the nuclear and the green taxonomy. As I discussed, we mobilised a huge number of citizens from all across Europe and diverse backgrounds to make it clear that there was support amongst the European people for including nuclear in the green taxonomy, including scientists such as James Hansen, who was famous in bringing the climate crisis to the public's attention while addressing the US Congress in the late 80s. So we negotiated a $55 million funding package for livestock displacing alternative proteins in the European Union. We had an open letter signed by 4 former EU commissioners and 100 leading scientists. And we spoke directly with politicians and did a lot of advocacy, including a speaking tour with George Monbiot. And that petition mobilised 75,000 signatures, and we delivered it with a visual stunt here, which was very cool. As part of that, we had this open letter that was signed by these former commissioners and a range of academics and key public figures. So we were very proud of what we could do there. As I said, our third big win was mobilising to get this vote for new genomic techniques across the line in the European Union. The European Union has typically been very resistant to adopting new technologies, and a lot of their regulations have been holding back these innovations that could help us achieve climate goals and other environmental goals. The other thing is that the European Union is often seen as the gold standard by many regulators across the world. So by shifting the policy positions in the EU, we hope that that will have a knock-on effect globally. So we got 37 Nobel laureates and 1,500 scientists to sign an open letter. And then we mobilized nearly 2,000 scientists across Europe and 29 leading science institutions to come out and show their support for NGTs. And that was a really proud moment for us to see all these people taking action. Scientists are not usually ones to stick their neck out for politics. So this was a really powerful moment to see all these people taking action like this. But we do so much more. As I said before, we wrote a report about Switch Off Putin, one on energy, but also in the early days of the conflict, they were Russia was blockading Ukrainian grain shipments, which were impacting the world's poorest and developing communities, which was creating food shortages. So we also produced a report showing alternative ways that we could get food to the world's poorest people who needed it the most. We've also sponsored as well as created our own reports about nuclear energy, biomass, native forest protection, etc. We do actions. So it's been really great to combine those academic aspects of those reports and direct engagement with politicians with these grassroots actions to really highlight that people are willing to step up and to capture attention for the issues that we are campaigning on. Here's another one that we did very early in our movement where we were calling for the German government to keep their nuclear plants online instead of phasing them out as a way of reducing Russian independence on Russian fossil fuel imports and obviously protecting our climate. We do public outreach. This was in Brussels, where we were speaking to people on the street about new genomic techniques and how they can help us produce more sustainable things like cookies. Who doesn't love cookies? And as Andrea mentioned, we were doing public outreach here in Sydney as well for our McChoice campaign. We do movement building. So whether it's conferences like this or it's face-to-face meetings in our local communities, and we have regular meetings of our campaigners across our network to build this movement that will stand up and defend the innovations that will provide a thriving humanity on a thriving planet. Here's another image from our rallies in Berlin. And as I mentioned, we really have three main components of our advocacy. One is direct political advocacy, speaking directly to politicians. One is that grassroots on the street activism, and then we have those academic reports that we provide to help inform the media, public, and politicians about public policy ideas. So here's just a snapshot of the media reach that we've had. So as I mentioned before, Dear Greenpeace was our most successful campaign launch so far. 1.3 billion aggregate readership across the first week of Dear Greenpeace was phenomenal, and we saw a really big uptick in the amount of people coming and seeking out our movement, and that's been really great. Ia Arnstut, who was the face of that campaign launch, has done a fantastic job mobilising young people to fight for clean energy and for climate action. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here, and for all those who are already involved with WePlanet. We are very young, as Andrew was saying, 2 years here in Australia, 3 and a bit more internationally, and we are continuing to grow from that humble basement in Antwerp to over 19 countries now globally. So that is WePlanet, and I hope that as many of you as possible will get involved and we can fight for a thriving humanity on a thriving planet. Thanks, everyone.